here's to hoping and praying that this camera is set up properly. This is going to be a March reading vlog where I vlog my reading in March. I've been really busy for the year so far, like balancing school and work, and I did make a video a couple months back saying that I wasn't going to be making videos for this precise reason, and trying to vlog February made me remember why I made that video. But the thing is, I don't want my channel to just become like dead space, so I do want to try and push out something at least monthly and maybe a few videos in between. So that's why I'm reattempting this for March. I have not really been reading a lot for the year so far. I've only read 2 books for the year so far, one in February and one in January. So the book that I read in January was The Jumbie Bird by Ismet Khan, which takes place here in Trinidad. It's a classic that was published in the 1960s, I believe, but takes place in the 1930s. We're following an Indo-Trinidadian Muslim family living in Port of Spain, right on Frederick Street, and it focuses on 3 generations of men in the family, but particularly the grandfather and the grandson. So the grandfather's name is Kale Khan, and he came to Trinidad from India during indentureship. His grandson, who was born and raised in Trinidad, is very enamored with his grandfather and wants to be just like him. So the story is essentially about their relationship. But in the bigger picture of things, this is really a story that takes place at a crucial point in Indo-Caribbean history, where India is still remembered and revered as the homeland, but where the Caribbean and where Trinidad is seen as the new home, the new place that we have to settle and work with. So you have the older generations like Kale Khan, who are very much in love with India, who want to go back to India, who see their future as going back to their past, whereas you have the younger generations who view Trinidad as a place where they feel like outsiders, but that is their home compared to this almost folklorish Hindustan that they've never even seen. So this is a really interesting point in history, and I would say like the grandson in the story, he's of like my grandparents' generation. So I mean, now we're living in a time where most Indians do not view India as our homeland or anything like that. The Caribbean is our homeland now. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic that we're seeing in this story with the relationship to Trinidad versus the relationship to India. I really did appreciate seeing the exploration of an Indo-Trinidadian Muslim family in particular. Maybe Ismet Khan has a couple more, maybe there are a few books out there, but it's the only book that I know of that is a classic Caribbean story written by someone from a Muslim background, following characters who are of a Muslim background. Mostly though, Ismet Khan is just a boss writer. His prose is phenomenal, and the best thing that he's able to capture in his book is the sense of setting. He has this visceral and descriptive way of writing that's also not very overwrought or on the nose, which is a really difficult balance to find in good writing, and it's very characteristic of Caribbean writers, especially classic Caribbean writers. So it's really nice to just pick up a book like this and get immersed in a writing style that you honestly don't really see much anymore. It's ultimately a story about identity and trying to remain steadfast in some idea of who you are, even if that idea is not completely accurate or true or even healthy for you. It's about trying to remain firm in that in a world that is so deeply defined by race and gender and colonialism and immigration and all these different things. It's a fascinating story, and I definitely think that it's an underrated classic compared to some others that we see people celebrating all the time in Caribbean literature. So I highly recommend that you pick up The Jumbie Bird. It holds a special place in my heart now. I give it 4 stars. The next book was lent to me by my friend Keith, who is an anthropologist. He's been lending me a lot of books on anthropology and human history, and one of the books that he lent me is Sapiens, which is kind of like the book on human history. It's an exploration of the emergence of the species Homo sapiens, our species, from our very emergence and early evolution from the hominin family tree all the way down to who we are today and what we might be in the future. It's a really expansive sort of threading out of humanity and understanding all of the things that define us and understanding all of the things that we create. And that's ultimately, I think, the main thing about this book. It's a book that really tries to explore how we create and construct our realities, both physically in terms of making things, right, from the earliest stone tools to like freaking, skyscrapers, to constructing our realities ideologically in terms of the systems and ideas that we come up with, religions, nation states, economic systems. It's all about how we create our own realities and then we feed into that, and it's like this really interesting cycle, and that's ultimately kind of the main defining thing about our species, or at least one of the main things. So I really like that this book explores that. Is it the most nuanced or rigorous book? No, but it's not meant to be a very academic book. It's meant to be a book that's more, how do I say, palatable or digestible to a general readership without necessarily dumbing things down. It's a nice balance between something dense but something approachable, and that's what I really liked about this book. As I said, this book talks a lot about how we construct and create our own realities, and one of the ways in which we do that is to fabricate the idea of the nation state, right? So like the nation is not a real thing, right? It's an idea that we impose onto a particular land or region and groups of people. So the author really goes into that and how, you know, nations are backed by ideologies and particular goals and blah blah blah. And he's Israeli. And, you know, at no point does he ever really talk about Israel and Palestine. And I can understand why that is. You know, I'm sure he's very conscious of what Israel is and what it has done and what it continues to do to justify itself as a state in this world through the displacement of Palestinian people and the occupation of their land. We don't need to get into that. But perhaps he wanted to write about it a little more implicitly so that people reading it can get that that is where he is in terms of the way he views the world. But perhaps he just avoided saying it too explicitly so that the book would not be too controversial. I don't know, it just felt very icky reading this book and, you know, hearing all of the things that he has to say about the construction of our realities without him really delving into that particular political quagmire. I don't know, it was still a good book otherwise. I gave it 4 stars and I can see why it's so widely appreciated. So that's everything that I read for the year so far, and I do want to get into the books that I'm currently reading, but I need to jump out of this car and go start my day. Right now I'm on campus. I have a bunch of things that I need to get done, so I don't want to just be sitting along in the car all morning, because trust and believe I would if I could. Alright, so I am currently sitting on a bench, my favorite bench on this entire campus. I like to come here and sit down and just kind of chill, read for an hour or two before I start my day, which is why I like to get on campus early. It's like my way of self-care. Sometimes you might even see some birds and some iguanas, and it's just really, it's a nice vibe. It's not always great. Sometimes the bench is wet, sometimes it's raining, and right now I seem to be sharing the bench with what looks like a copious amount of bird shit. So yeah, thanks Kiskadis. So the first book that I'm reading, I'm actually listening to on audio, and that is A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. This is a multi-generational story about a Palestinian family in which the women in the family are very oppressed. So the mother, the daughters, the grandmother, they're all, you know, having to live their life at the mercy of the men in their life, but also it kind of explores how women are complicit in that as well, how grandmothers and mothers-in-law and mothers also enforce this very strict repressive lifestyle onto their daughters and granddaughters and daughters-in-law and that kind of stuff. I'm not one to say that you shouldn't write about things that are stereotypical, because some stereotypes are rooted in reality, and the reality is that there are many families, many Muslim families, who do live like this. So I'm not saying that that is something that you can't write about, but at the same time it just feels so on the nose, and it's just like, it feels just like another story about like extremely oppressed Muslim women. When you are a Muslim who grows up in a family or a community that's not quite like that, it's just very grating to just see these types of narratives. You get this kind of secondhand embarrassment, but you're also like asking yourself, why is this even necessary? I don't know, that's how I feel about the book so far, but I'm not super far into it, and I'm kind of judging it based on my feelings and biases right now. So as I get deeper into it, I'm sure I'll appreciate it more. It's definitely a widely read and celebrated book in some circles. I'm also currently reading Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hussein. This is an arc that the author gave me a while back, and I still haven't finished it, and the book is already out. I am really enjoying it though. It is a fascinating story that takes place in 1940s Trinidad, and it predominantly follows this family who get involved in a really sticky situation. I actually went to the book launch for this on Saturday, and I didn't really take much clips, unfortunately, because I'm terrible at BookTube, but I did record a little bit of the author reading, and I ran into some really fun people, like some other authors that I know, like Lisa Allen Agostini and Andre Bagu. I even ran into some other bookstagrammers like Cindy from Book of Sins and Ambika from Ambi Reads, as well as a whole bunch of other people I know. It's actually a really fun event, and while I was there, even though I have the arc of the US edition, I picked up a final copy of the UK edition because I actually really like that cover a little bit more. I think both of these covers do embody the story really well. This one captures the landscape of the story really well, whereas I think the UK cover really captures those moodier, dark undertones of Kevin Jared Hossain's writing, and that's ultimately like one of the things that I enjoy about his writing the most. I read one of his other books, The Beast of Cucuyo, and even though this book is very different from that, what binds them together, I would say, is his ability to really tap into this ominous underlying fear, this kind of like almost horror atmosphere that he writes into his stories. It's just so good. He's such a fantastic writer, and I'm telling you, this is someone that y'all should be reading and should be looking out for. And the last book that I'm reading was also lent to me by my friend Keith. This is called How to Think Like an Anthropologist by Matthew Anglicay. It's a really interesting book that sort of, you know, explores like the basic concepts of anthropology that anthropologists have been using for decades, like culture and civilization, values, identity, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really interesting in that regard. It's also addressing kind of like the history and the emergence of the field, as well as the controversial things about it, the good and the bad. Reading this book is really giving me a better idea of the disciplinary emergence of anthropology and its uniqueness within the sphere of different subjects and different fields of scholarship. So really enjoying this one, and I think I'm actually going to sit down and read some more of this right now before I go ahead and start my day. This is my second attempt at filming this clip because the first time I did it I was just rambling, so I want to try to be a little bit more concise. But I do want to include this like little clip of these two dogs that came and said hi to me and ran around me for like 2 minutes and then they ran away. I thought they were very cute, and they came to me at a very appropriate time because I was actually talking about Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hossain, which is a book that has dogs in it, and dogs actually have a huge symbolic purpose in the story, and they serve this purpose of almost mirroring the way that people treat each other. You know, I feel like Trinidadians have a particular relationship with dogs, from the ones who love them to the ones who hate them. We all have, there's this particular culture around dogs that's just very different from at least my observations of other places, and it was interesting to see how that was explored in this book. And I loved it. It was definitely a 4.5 to 5-star read. Kevin Jared Hossain brilliantly explores the complexity of what it means to be human in this story by kind of giving us characters who you want to root for but who you feel betrayed by towards the end. And I can't think of anything that is ultimately more human than that. Giving us characters who are complex and flawed to the point where I'm questioning whether I like or dislike some of them towards the end. And I like when books do that. It was so good. It's a story about betrayal, but also about poverty and community and violence and being at the margins of society and things that it would push you to do. How you make sense of that, how you negotiate that, and how that ends up shaping your perspective of the world and the way that you view the world. It's one of those stories that's difficult to talk about. Like, when I read the first 100 pages, I really thought I knew what this book was about. Finishing it, I can't say that I do. It's about a lot of things, and it's one of those stories that's really difficult to capture in a few sound bites. A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. I also finally finished this one, and I did like it coming down to the end, even though I was still very uncomfortable with the whole stereotypical thing and whether just because it's a stereotype, is it really true? And even if it is true for some people, should we, you know, have like the worst case scenario of it be represented in a story? I don't think I'm the one to have that conversation. I'm not Arab, I'm not Palestinian. I am Muslim, but I didn't grow up in a super fundamentalist strict Muslim family. And this is the thing about this family too in this book. They're not very religious actually. They are Muslims, but a lot of their stringent belief systems, at least according to the book, comes more so from their culture, not their religion, which I found to be interesting. And I think that is something that a lot of Muslim authors are actually toying with in books, and I see it a lot. Like, it's not the religion, it's the culture. It's extremely infuriating to read what these female characters are going through and the things that are happening to them. You want to jump in the book and jump kick some of these people. Like, it's horrendous. There were things that really resonated with me. There were things that happened in the story that honestly, like, you know, I keep talking about like stereotypes make you uncomfortable, but some of the things that happen in the story, they do be happening in real life, and I've seen them, and it's bad. Maybe this book is like the worst case scenario representation of these things, but it happens. What I appreciated most about the story is something that I don't think it went into much detail with this, but it was towards the end. It really sort of tried to talk about the whole idea of running away from your culture and your community when it becomes toxic. Whether you have a horrible toxic family, whether you come from a culture that is super repressive, or just, you know, overall terrible in its belief systems, or whether you come from a really strict repressive community, the answer isn't always to run away. Liberating yourself from the community also means liberating yourself from your own history, culture, and family, and that's not always a good thing. And you can understand why people do it, and I don't blame people for doing it, but the book kind of toys with the idea that it's not the healthiest thing to do, but also staying is also not the healthiest thing to do. So it kind of questions in a way like, what is the middle ground? How do we fix our communities and the problems within our communities and liberate ourselves within our communities without having to abandon them? And the book doesn't have an answer for that. The ending is very open, and I don't think it's meant to have an answer for that, because there's no perfect way to work around these things, and I like that the book didn't try to tie things up neatly in the end. Yeah, it was good. 4 stars. 4 stars. I just wanted to bitch about something. I borrowed a book from the library, and listen, I should have trusted my instincts, because something told me when I saw this book and the cover and the title, something was like, nope. And I was like, no, I'm going to give it a try, because I don't want to judge a book by its impression or the impression that it's giving me. Let me give it a try. I'm really interested in archaeology and history and all that kind of stuff, and I've always been enamored with the British Isles. I've only been to London once, and outside of London I've only visited Stonehenge, and I would love to go all over the British Isles, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, all of the places. And so when I saw this book in the library, even though my racist radar was going off, I was like, let me give it a try. It's called The Story of the British Isles by Neil Oliver. Now, if you're familiar with this author, you probably know that I made a bad decision. And I should have known, because I looked at the back and I was like, it's giving Lucius Malfoy. I opened it and I started to read the introduction. It was going really cute until I got to this part. Inhabitants of every other country might claim that their homeland is special and unique, but there has always been something remarkable about these islands. This place grew in time to change the whole world. You don't say. Laws and a system of governance were established. Later, the kingdoms were united, and then the parliaments. Our industrial revolution empowered the building of the greatest empire the world has yet seen.
And I was like, as in slavery? And she was like, yes.
Most recently, the newcomers have arrived in hope of the freedom made sacred by our democracy, the protection promised and enshrined by our laws. What now for us, the people who call these islands home? It seems to me that for a long time we have been preoccupied with our rights.
Oh, Joe Biden? Yeah, we're gonna have to rethink these rights. I'm not seeing it.
I kind of want to write a letter to the library. I'm not going to do that, I'm just kidding. Trying to like fix my hair to cover up this like bald spot, because like my hair it's been receding.
And she is what? Bald.
I'll be looking patchy like Cynthia from Rugrats. So it's actually the 1st of April, and I only finished 2 more books. I feel like 4 books alone in March for the length of this vlog was just not enough. So I think I'm just going to make this an April and March reading vlog because I'm probably not going to read that much in April anyways either. This video is just gonna be just like an overview of everything I read for the first third of the year. So let's just look at it like that. I finished How to Think Like an Anthropologist and I really enjoyed it. It was a really good exploration of the conceptual and theoretical terrain of anthropology as a discipline. I give it like 3.5 to 4 stars. The only reason why I didn't give it like a full 5 stars is because I think towards the end of the book, in the last few chapters, he tried to condense a lot of things that might have been better as their own separate chapters, but obviously he had his limits, and I understood at least why he, talked about certain things under other topics, if that makes sense. And then the next book I read, I actually read in one sitting. I sat down in my hammock on Sunday and I consumed the entire thing in like 3 hours because it's only like about 140 pages long. It's called The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Sun Mi Hwang, which was translated from Korean to English by Cheong Kim. And it's a story that it's not like Animal Farm, other than it is based in an anthropomorphic farm that is meant to allegorize wider societal issues or whatever. In this case, however, we're focusing on a chicken named Sprout, who is a hen, a layer, who lives her entire life in this coop and she hates it there. It's stuffy, it's crowded, it's very oppressive, and she's just like laying eggs all day that won't hatch for the farmers to take away and eat or sell or whatever. And she keeps looking at the animals in the barnyard and she realizes she really wants to go live with them. She wants to live with them and she wants to lay her own egg and hatch it and actually raise her own child. So she runs away from the coop and she goes to the barn, but is rejected by the barn people, by the animals in the barn. They reject her because they're like, oh no bitch, you from the coop, we don't vibes with y'all, get out of here, like whatever. So they chased her away and she ends up living in like the forest, like on the fringes of the farm, and she ends up living this really epic nomadic life. She has to like spend her life like running away from this weasel that's trying to eat her, and then one day she comes upon an abandoned egg. And the story kind of like takes on a whole new life from there. Unlike Animal Farm, which is very specific in what it's trying to allegorize, this book you can have a wider interpretation or reading of it. I personally had a very queer reading of it. That's how I looked at it. There was a lot in here about not being able to fit into what you were prescribed to do, and when you tried to get away from that and gain acceptance from the wider society, they rejected you. So you had to go on the fringes of society and you created your own found family, and it felt very gay without any of the characters actually experiencing same-sex attraction. I mean, they're animals, so like, ew. It was a really good book and it definitely stuck with me. I give it 5 stars and I would definitely recommend that you pick it up because it is short, it's very easy to get through, and if you're looking to read more Korean fiction, especially translated fiction, I think this is a great option. So right now it's Saturday, it's April Fool's Day, and I'm on campus. I decided to come here to do some work and I just sat down basically doing like a mini report that took me forever, and I want a little break, so I decided to come and sit on my favorite bench and do some reading. I'm currently reading this short story collection by Andre Bagu. It's called The Dreaming. Andre Bagu is a local author. I kind of mentioned him earlier in this video because I saw him at he gave me this a few months back. We had met for the first time and he gave me this as well as his one of his poetry collections, because he's mostly a poet and he has tons of poetry collections, and I only just started reading it. I'm about 4 stories in and I'm really loving it. It's a very interesting collection of stories that mostly focus on the gay male experience in Trinidad, and so a lot of these stories are really interesting and they feel quite fresh and modern, and it's difficult to find queer Caribbean literature like this that feels so in tune with what's happening now. Usually these books tend to be set in the past and they're very trauma heavy. Not that these stories are particularly lighthearted, but they definitely just feel more like chill and normal and, sort of exploring, just the everyday struggles and contemplations and obstacles that queer men in Trinidad face, particularly when it comes to relationships, as opposed to dealing with wider society and acceptance and all that kind of stuff. At least that's what I got from it so far. So I'm really, really enjoying it. I love this cover. I think it's really cute, the hummingbirds and stuff. It's a nice touch. And yeah, I'm gonna sit down and maybe read like 1 or 2 stories before I get back to work. Listen, I'm kind of ready to give up on this vlog, you know. I've been enjoying doing it, but it's too much. Like it's a long period of time, lots of books. It just feels very chaotic. My life isn't that exciting, so there's not many new things I could film. I was going to do this till the end of April. We're about halfway through April, and there are other things I could incorporate into the vlog. Eid is coming up soon, all that kind of stuff, but it's already so long, and I don't see the point. Like, I might read a couple more books before the end of the month, but I don't necessarily feel like it warrants me holding out until then to finish this video. So I think I'm just going to stop it now and just be happy with where it is and end the video here before it becomes too drawn out. I don't want to waste. A part of me doesn't even want to post this because I feel like it was just like me talking and rambling and filming random things. But I figured, you know what, I'm just going to post it because I already have all of the clips. I already edited everything. This is the only clip that I haven't edited as yet because I'm filming it. Updates wise, I finished this and it was damn good. I really, really enjoyed it. And then I started another short story collection, and you know what, I'm just gonna have like a wrap up at the end of April where I talk about all of these books and leave it there. Sorry for an underwhelming ending to what I hope was still an entertaining or watchable vlog. In the comments down below, I'd love to know if you made it to the end, so let me know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.